We're not gonna have video, only audio. It's fine. Yeah.
Well, I have to play way through that. We gotta do. Wait, seriously.
You should.
But. Come to us, already takes all their numbers and tosses them up.
That was the whole purpose.
How many beds are you gonna have in there?
I can hear you loud and clear.
You're gonna get overrun with, yeah.
Maybe there. Problem. It's everywhere.
Oh, God, nuts.
Just got the thumbs up. There's nobody online.
Wow. Yeah.
Breath.
I know.
Probably. Okay.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to go.
Yeah, it has.
If I could hit that, get everyone to take their seats. How about that? There we go. Rich with power. Okay, good morning, everybody. If everyone could take their seats, we'll get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9:10. Apologies for the delay. We just wanted to make sure we were technically communicating to the world ostensibly. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if the clerk would please call the roll.
Ms. Bagley.
Here.
Ms. Bailey. Present. Ms. Carey. Present. Ms. Hayes.
Here.
Ms. Holmes. Here. Karen Thomas. Here. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Ms. Mensing.
Here.
Ms. Bethke.
Here.
Mr. Stork.
Here.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Here.
And Madam Chair, we have.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. We will begin this morning with a safety moment provided by our CEO.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We have made some assignments as it relates to 911. We do have a runner to meet first responders, and we have certified folks that'll get the AED and if we need a first aid kit. And again, if others get involved, of course, the AED and first aid kits out there by the elevator, go through the double wooden doors there to get there. same route we take as a primary evacuation route, except we would not take the elevator. We'll take the stairs, pop down on the first floor. And our primary muster place will be out in the circle parking area out there. We'll have taken a head count in here just to make sure via head count that we have everybody out there. That's my safety moment, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to move on to approval of the minutes from the October 18th, 24 VRE Operations Board meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Were provided in advance. All right, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All right, with a motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motions are approved unanimously. This is the moment now for the vice chair's comments.
Agenda.
Agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip over the agenda? I did. I don't see it in the notes. Okay, so we have to approve the agenda. It is up on the screen before us. Is there any questions or discussion about the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. A second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All right, everybody in support of that motion? Please indicate aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the agenda is approved. And oh, I see, I did them out of order. So we've done approval of the minutes. There we go. All right, so we're back on track now. And now we are at vice chair's comments. All right. So welcome, everybody. I'm here today. I'll do my best to serve the chair role and get us through this meeting efficiently. I wanted to highlight the Santa train is coming to town again on December 14th. The sales are going to open in-person sales on Monday, December 2nd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Woodbridge Station, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, and Manassas Visitor Centers, and at Supervisor Walkinshaw's office in Burke. They are $5 in cash. Are you ready for that? Yeah.
Do the train every year.
Yeah, so cash tickets are $5, $6 if you pay with credit card. The online sales will open the next day, Tuesday, December 3rd at 10 a.m. through eventbrite.com. Tickets sell faster than a Taylor Swift concert, so get online and be ready. There'll be $6 online. Board members who would like tickets should reach out to Leslie to make those arrangements. And I'm going to make a little bit of a personal plea here. I have played Mrs. Claus the last 2 years and thoroughly enjoyed it. But unfortunately, I actually have a city council public hearing that day. So I won't be able to star in that role again. And I would love to encourage anybody to consider doing it. It's really a lot of fun. The kids respond so well. And you just get to like hand out candy canes and make people smile. And it's a pretty great experience. And the Santas too, whoever you get paired with. So with that, I will move on to the CEO's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do have several topics, but I'll be concise. First, on a safety note, I did want to at least acknowledge that our partners at Keolis, specifically their Broad Run Mechanical Operations team, celebrated this last month 9 years of injury free. Quite an accomplishment. And then just wanted to show here, continuing with several of our safety awareness campaigns, one of which has been to reach out to, young children and stuff like that. Our safety and security manager held an event at the Lord of Life preschool in Fairfax in basically 2 rail safety education events. There was a total of about 84 children that participated. They did train story time, a sing along, and of course discuss being safe in and around railroad tracks. So those efforts continue. On-time performance still flatline system-wide at 75%, as it has been for the last several months. Still the largest contributor to that is in the overall category of congestion, 69%. I did want to, I've showed you this graph the last couple of months, just to sort of break down that congestion, total through the month of October. It's over 1,600 total delays. And just to redefine a delay, that's a train that arrives at the end of the line station, that is 6 minutes or more late. So, where we did see in October, or excuse me, September, we did see some additional, I'll just say some additional freight train interference out there. It did subside a little bit in October. It's picked up again in November. September predominantly was around, and well, freight service, part of it's been, there's been some rerouting of freight trains around the Carolina area. And of course, that subsided a little bit in October, but in November, of course, this is a peak season ahead of the holidays. But nonetheless, still seeing congestion out there, more trains than we have capacity for, in a nutshell. Ridership, second highest total monthly ridership in the last 12 months. And just barely, though, from an average daily ridership, I think this was the third highest by like two riders. Again, over the last 12 months. November's been pretty strong, at least initially. Ridership is continuing to pick up. Maybe instead of just one rider at a time, we're 2 riders at a time, but nonetheless, it's trending in the right direction. Did want to call out 2 weeks ago today, had a very important event, if you will, at Quantico Station. Was the ribbon cutting for that event. Just wanted to state this was, as if you were in attendance, of course, this is the culmination of several projects that came together, and just wanted to state also that this project is, or the station is partially open. We still are fine-tuning a couple of things at the station, but it was good to get out there and get the Quantico Station Improvement Project ribbon cut. Perfect timing, because I'm gonna toss to you for just a second to see if you want any comments, but before I play a short little video here about the Quantico Station.
Absolutely. It was an absolute brilliant day. Thank you all for participating. Quantico Town was just over the top excited about the wonderful improvements that we're making on the base, and the base commander is still talking about it. And so thank you to your staff, Rich. Y'all were excellent. The revisions have been, will improve the quality of life for not just the base, but for Q-Town and for Dumfries, that area especially. So thank you so much for your support. Long time coming, but just perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll play a little quick video.
It was great.
That was a great event. And again, I know several others were there as well in attendance. But yeah, it was a great event. Keeping with the military theme, maybe Marine Corps Base Quantico, right into Veterans Day here. Just want to acknowledge VRE staff, veterans. We do have 9 folks out of a staff of about 60, so that's a good percentage. But just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge our veterans as the nation recognized them on Monday, the 11th. Last month, we did have just a brief discussion about DMV moves. I thought I'd just kind of bring that back a little bit, and just kind of at a high level, one of the purposes, if you will, of DMV moves is essentially to bring all transit providers and other stakeholders in the region together to develop a shared unified vision for the region's transit services. And sort of buried in there, but arguably one of the most important pieces of that element is to, improve the overall customer experience and ease of use of transportation or public transportation in Northern Virginia. Of course, other efforts within this, within DMV moves is to look at some cost efficiencies and of course, funding opportunities. One of the most recent, if you will, events is as an offshoot from the Government Partners Advisory Committee that I sit on, Kate sits on it, Bob Snyder sits on it, is there have been, they've developed a couple of, or actually 6 working groups from that VRE staff will be participating in. One group will be looking at fare policy. Another group will be looking at service guidelines and performance measures. Another group looking at wayfinding and amenities. Another group looking at bus priority strategies. Another group looking at shared resources and assets. And finally, a group looking at consistent training and inspections. There's a couple of categories in there that are very bus specific. VRE won't participate in that, but nonetheless, that's how it's shaping up specifically as it relates to VRE's involvement. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'll start giving you a little bit more frequent updates as calendar year 25 unfolds. But nonetheless, just wanted to bring that to you. Also wanted to, just as an update on on our Manassas line discussion, we are currently working with BPRA on a long-term operating access agreement. And just as you recall, we're under we did enter into an interim agreement with them. And so we're working out that longer-term arrangement. I've shared, it's still out there, our draft funding agreement. The premise or the basic elements of that haven't changed. What we've actually been working on more as a staff over the last month is just as I've outlined before, basically working through or working with the FTA in essentially reallocating our federal formula funds to be able to provide that requested financial contribution over the 5 years. That work has been going on in earnest. We just recently, in the last, I think, couple of days, one element was to receive some appraisals on property values and stuff like that. So we're getting that back. Just as a heads up, what I'm targeting is to bring you both those agreements, operating access agreement and the funding agreement, back in December for discussion and ultimately a recommendation to the commission. So that's what we're working on now. More to follow next month. And those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. And so would the commissions then separately approve them in January? If they're approved here in December?
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions about the CEO report? Comments? Moving on then, the VRE accepts public comments both in person and electronically via the VRE website. Members of the public wishing to make public comments have 3 minutes and should state their full name and the jurisdiction they live in. And written comments submitted before 8 a.m. this morning will be forwarded to the members of the board and attached to the official minutes. Do we have any members of the public here who would like to address the board? Don't see any responding to that. Madam Clerk, do we have any electronically submitted comments?
Madam Vice Chair, we do not have it.
All right. Moving on then, we will keep going into item 9A, which is acceptance of the fiscal year 2024 audited financial statements and auditor's report and authorization to forward to the commissions. Rich, could you introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Yeah, so this, the recommendation specifically is to accept the annual financial report and authorized me to forward the information to the commissions. I know that the audit committee met earlier with the auditor. So before you take action on that, Dwight from PB Mayors, I'm sure would like to say a couple of things. And then, of course, anybody that was participating in the audit committee meeting, I'll open that up for you guys as well. So with that.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning. First, I just want to thank VRE staff, Rich, staff for this year's audit. They were fully prepared for us when we walked in the door, so it makes our job as auditors a little bit easier. You should have received 2 packages as part of your board package this year. There's the audited financial statements. There's only several pages in there that belong to PB Mayors. Those are the opinions. There's 2 opinions, one on the financial statements themselves, and then the second opinion is on the internal controls of VRE. Both those opinions are unmodified, the highest opinion that we can issue as auditors. So a clean audit again this year. So boring audit, but you want to hear the word boring associated with an audit. So the second package is the board communication package that you should have received. This just summarizes our responsibility as auditors, VRE's responsibility as the auditee, along with other accounting estimates, things of that nature that we have to audit and take a look at as we go through the audit process. As Rich said, I did have a chance to go into detail with the executive committee beforehand related to the financial statements and answer questions they had. But if there's any questions anyone here has, I will be happy to answer those.
Any questions for the auditor group this morning?
Okay.
Did any members of the committee want to add anything to the conversation from our committee meeting? No? Well, then I want to express just my appreciation for the work I know on the VRE side that went into preparing for the audit. We definitely heard good feedback about their preparation and participation. I want to thank the auditors for providing a report that was digestible and helped us highlight some key items for us. With that, I would take a motion with regarding this action item.
So moved, Madam Vice. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? All right, the item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So, Rich, could you please introduce item B or 9B on the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is, well, let me just start. It's that time of year again. It's almost the end of the calendar year, getting ready to flip to the new calendar year. So every time this year in November, we mobilize the nominating committee, and this is the charge to the nominating committee regarding subordinate officers. As you recall, for those that were on the board a couple of years ago, the operations board had several discussions specifically about the potential need to update or change the bylaws as it relates to having additional members on the executive committee. And it was decided at that time that changes to the bylaws were not needed, but the board would be presented with a recommendation or a charge to the nominating committee to consider additional members to the executive committee to just simply better represent, riders throughout the multiple jurisdictions. So if that's the case again this year, this would, by approving this, you would just be sending that charge to the nominating committee to consider additional executive committee meetings in addition to what's already stated in the bylaws. That's my summary, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this item? And any questions or comments from the nominating committee themselves? All right, well, then I will take a motion.
For approval, Madam Vice.
Second.
All right, thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, with that, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to action item 9C. Rich, if you could introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is, we included this in our agenda package. This stemmed from a conversation that that Chair Bomke brought up last month about the or currently scheduled December 20th Operations Board meeting. And what the chair had asked us to do is to subsequent to the October meeting, asked us to send a survey out to you guys. Anyway, the topic here is with December 20th being right there ahead of the Christmas holiday. The thought was there may be some folks that were in conflict. And of course, we want to make sure that we have a quorum for our December meeting. We've got a budget to pass and some other agreements to pass. So the response from the survey, it indicated that, well, I'll just say there was 10 response, 8 indicated that moving the meeting to the Friday prior, which was the option discussed during the operations board meeting in October, they would be in favor of that. So, but nonetheless, just wanted to bring that back up for a discussion. I will point out that there is a potential conflict for some or many on that same day on December 13th, which is the annual legislative event or forum that NVTC, PRTC, and VRE co-sponsored there. But nonetheless, Madam Chair, that's my summary. If you want to just open it up to a discussion.
Yeah, I would sort of invite us to talk about, you know, if anybody who wasn't able to respond to the survey, I know a few people weren't able to, or if anybody in any further reflection or in consideration of the MVTC forum, if it wants to, you know, open up and have a conversation about this scheduling item. And Ms. Mattias, yeah.
So, and Rich and I have had some conversations about if the board obviously decides to have the meeting on the 13th, we can work with George Mason University, which is where the morning forum is, to identify a location for you to hold the meeting. Historically, PRTC has provided transportation for its board members. We would love for VRE not to miss an event that they are a part of, that Rich was scheduled to speak at. And so we are happy to help make that work from the space considerations, obviously many other considerations. In addition to the panel that's highlighted on, or we do have a panel of transit general managers, including Rich, Randy Clark, Josh Baker, and Bob Schneider. And we also have Senator Louise Lucas is going to be doing some opening remarks. So I would appreciate if we were able to pull it off, but I also understand the constraints. I will not take it personally.
That's what we needed to know.
Yeah.
Is whether she'd take it personally. That's.
So I don't want to like overly direct sort of the outcome here or lead the conversation. I mean, I will, you know, I would like to attend both. I'd like to be at the VRE board meeting and I'd like to participate, you know, in the MVTC legislative forum, which I have attended in the past. So should we move the VRE meeting, I'll be in a little bit of a spot, you know, in terms of deciding what I can do. But it's not entirely about my schedule or the MVTC members. So I you know, welcome any feedback. If there isn't any and we're all comfortable with moving it to the 13th at this location, you know, that's the way the motion's currently presented. But I did just want us to pause long enough to like appreciate the implications. Yeah, I think it was Ms. Hayes. Yeah, I saw Ms. Holmes behind you as well.
Would it be possible for those that are, need to be at this location to maybe call in for the meeting and do like you know, sort of a hybrid Zoom type of meeting? Just so that this can be, and maybe have the agenda be fairly light?
Is it not the budget?
It's,
Oh, it's the budget.
that's the.
Right.
This is an important meeting.
Yeah, it is an important meeting.
If I could I have Ms. Holmes speak first and then I'll come back to you.
I was just gonna say, I do have a conflict for the 13th.
Okay.
Just for what it's worth, like if we're doing a strong.
Ms. Gary, please.
I already have on my calendar that the VRE Operations Board was moved to the 20th for December.
That's where it's scheduled.
That's when it's scheduled.
It's currently scheduled. What this is a recommendation to move it to the 13th. Because of,
It was,
because of potential conflicts that I guess a few had expressed to Chair Bomke.
Was the conflict on the 20th?
Just, it's the 20th, it's
Proximity to major.
just being able to attend the meeting on the 20th.
Okay, so the reschedule would be the conflict.
Yes.
Right, so the way the meeting's currently scheduled is on the 20th, and the conflict essentially is just its proximity to the holidays. So the suggestion and the way the action item is currently phrased would move the meeting to the 13th, which would create a different type of conflict, which is with the legislative forum. And so there's sort of, in a way, there's two things being discussed here. There's, do we want to move the meeting? Which again is the way the action item is currently presented. We move the meeting from the 20th to the 13th. There is the alternative proposal, if I could put forward sort of, yes, move it, but also physically, if we move it to the 13th, we physically move it to George Mason, creating more opportunity for, I guess, Rich to step out and be on the panel or members to participate. Is that the vision? Ms.
Well,
McCabe?
honestly, it's gonna be taking direction from you. If you want us to find an adjacent room before, after, during, we would then work with George Mason to do that.
Mr.
Is the only option to have the meeting on the 13th exactly the same time, or would, hear participants being able to move in with the time, like the legislative forum ends at 11. We may do a effort to have everybody for lunch and
We'll never get
discuss
home.
budget, so.
That's the truth.
Get the food in. That's right.
Ms. Bailey.
I don't know, I mean, our schedules are intractable famously, so that.
I really like that idea, especially the lunch part. But I think if Kate is offering to make accommodations for us at George Mason, we could just leave that portion, because that is really a very informative and popular meeting that most of us go to. It is informative and important to attend there and to respect the fact that Rich is going to be a part of that. And then go into a room where we have our meeting. I would like to do that, or just stay with the 20th. Because we have enough conflicts as is with our scheduling. So that's just my 2 cents.
So I agree with Supervisor Bailey that this is an event that most of us usually attend. But also the budget is a really important conversation and something that won't be quick. So I'm concerned to trying to do them simultaneously, because why bother going to George Mason if we're not going to be able to participate? Other than, I like Takis's idea of moving the VRE meeting to maybe 11:30, so that then we could give our attention to both items that need to be taken care of that day. Or, as already stated, the 20th, unless, because the first in November, the first fell on a Friday, in 3 weeks would be December 6th. I don't know if that's too soon for the budget to be prepared or not. But I think most people are saying that they'd like to be able to attend this event, this legislative forum. And so I think an alternative to that, and if the 20th is too close to Christmas, I think we have to look at something.
So another, Ms. Holmes, I think.
Just also, these are public meetings, and I think it's also, when we start changing locations, though I do appreciate the offer, I think that's difficult for people to be at, to observe. And I also think that when we start changing dates, that also impacts their public dates.
If I could, can I ask, and I don't have the survey in front of me, and I don't actually remember exactly how it was phrased, but could I ask the survey question in a different way? How many people sort of know today they couldn't attend on the 20th? because I think it was asked, could you attend on the 13th?
Right.
And I think people might have said yes to that, but I think it's important to know the alternative, right? Are there people who know today the 20th is a problem? I recognize it's 5 days before Christmas, but I'm not seeing a lot of initial feedback.
Seems like everyone can make it.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't want to be seen as undermining the survey response, because I realize 8 people said they could on the 13th, but I don't think it was, I think phrasing it the opposite way makes the right question. Yeah, okay. In light of that, and I appreciate, Kate's offer to sort of host us, but I share the concerns that I don't want people popping in and out of that conversation. And I think you raise a great point, Ms. Holmes, about sort of people expect VRE to be here. I also appreciate the suggestion from Ms. Bailey, Mr. Carantonis, about potentially doing here later. My concern there is, can PRTC accommodate us later in the day? Can others, do that? I would invite, I guess, here's a VRE first for me. Is there a motion someone would like to put on the floor, either on the action item as proposed? And again, as proposed, it is to move the meeting from the 20th to the 13th. So would somebody like to put forward a motion on that item? Can't make motions, right? Or can I?
Steve, can you make a
You
motion?
can, yeah.
Oh, okay. Everybody seems to have slightly different rules on these things. Okay, so again, vote, however this plays out, but hearing what I've heard from the board, I'm going to propose that we do not move forward on the proposal to move the meeting from the regularly scheduled.
Just do it.
Don't do anything.
No one, no one needs to move.
We don't need to, not take action procedurally.
Right.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
Just reference to the schedule.
It just, okay. So is everybody, and again, it's a little awkward since we're not doing something and I haven't been a part of that process before. Is everybody clear and okay with leaving the meeting on December 20th in this location at its normal time? Okay, and that's what will happen. If you have questions or conflicts that arise, please, reach out to Leslie. Also, if anybody needs to be remote, given travel considerations, we still have that option as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for the dialogue on that. Moving on then, if Rich could present item 9D.
9D, Madam Vice Chair. Let's get to the right one. Yeah, seek an authorization exercise contract options for delivery of diesel fuel for VRE locomotives. Specifically, again, this time of year, you do see these from our 2 diesel fuel contractors, but we're looking to do the current contract year for our diesel fuel delivery services expires June 30th of 2025. What we like to do is come out with the next year ahead of time to go ahead and exercise those option years, to simply put ourselves in a position in the event that our diesel fuel broker gives us some good information, say at the beginning of the calendar year, January, February, March, to go ahead and lock in at some of those forward-looking prices that would be in the next fiscal year. In other words, it's not truly hedging. It's just, our strategy is to minimize the volatility of the price. So that's why I'm coming to you this early to seek the authorization specifically to exercise the first option year of the 2 contracts for diesel fuel delivery services with the diesel fuel delivery provider stated in the recommendation for the amount stated in the recommendation, and of course in the not to exceed amounts as well. That was quick, but if anybody has any questions, glad to answer them now. But that's my summary, Madam Vice Chair.
Any questions on this item for Rich? Bailey? Oh, all right, a second? All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the matter passes unanimously. Moving on to item 9E.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is authorization to execute a contract for state government relation services. VRE staff over the last couple of, or last several months have been doing a solicitation to renew our state government relations services contract that's set to expire at the end of the calendar year. The recommendation here is to authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Commonwealth Strategy Group of Richmond for state government relations services for a base period of 1 year with 4 one-year options that could be exercised at the CEO's discretion for a total amount as stated in the recommendation plus a contingency. This would be for the entire 5-year term. And just as a side note, this is the incumbent, correct? This is the incumbent state government relations provider. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions or comments on this item? All right, well, I appreciate it was a competitive process, and I know we've had strong representation in the past, and the need for that will continue. So I would entertain a motion on this item. Second. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Rich, item 9F.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This item is, we're seeking recommendation to the commissions for our 2025 legislative agenda. And of course, within that authorization just allows the CEO to actively pursue the different elements within the legislative agenda. Just as a side note, we've had various discussions with this board and the legislative committee going back to the summer. Nothing since our last discussion, and Joe, throw something at me if I'm not saying this correctly, but nothing materially has changed. Yeah, that works. That'll work. Yeah, nothing has changed, but I'll just open it up if anybody has any questions to the document, or if Joe, if there's something specifically you wanna address. Okay, that's my summary, Madam Chair.
All right, are there any questions or discussion about the legislative agenda? It's going to be more important than ever. I think that we continue to advocate strongly on behalf of the issues that are important to us at both at the state and federal level. So thank you all for your work contributing to this agenda. I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously. On to our final action item, 9G. Rich.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is just a recommendation to the commissions to authorize the CEO to submit on behalf of the commissions a VRE applications to the I-95 395 Commuter Choice FY 2026-2027 program. And of course, within that authorization is to make any corrections to project amounts or descriptions, applications, and then eventually a project funding agreement. Specifically, as we've done the last several years, looking for those opportunities to fill some funding gaps on some of our, well, I say out years. I mean, we said out years a couple of years ago, but those years are coming up quickly on us. But specifically for 2 projects, Leland Road Station Improvement Project in Stafford County, and of course, Brooks Station Improvement Project in Stafford County. And these are just 2 station projects, lengthening platforms, additional ingress, egress. It's in our CIP. They just show some funding gaps in there. And of course, they're mostly funded, if you will, but just show some gaps there. So we just want to go make the application and compete for those, for those funds that are available in the region. That's my summary, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Did anyone, Ms. Gary?
Yes, I just wanted to make one comment to that. I know there's a lot going on and there's potential larger changes at the Brooks Station in the out years. But just wanted to make you all aware that
FAMPO is working to get some complete streets funding, and I did meet with our county administrator to discuss making sure that we have something in our plans for multi-use paths, bike and ped, that would connect from Brook Point High School down towards the VRE as close as we can get. It's only about a mile, and we don't have really good connectivity there. So I just wanted to make you aware. So if you have any thoughts or concerns or things to share regarding that, to reach out to our transportation staff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Finding safe ways to get to the station, I think, is always a good investment. So I appreciate that, Ms. Gary. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, ma'am.
I have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion after the motion and second? Okay, all those in favor of action item 9G, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to section 10 of our agenda, the information items. We'll begin with Mark Schofield, who is here to give us an update on the FY 2026 budget.
Perfect. You got one of these up there, Mark? Okay. You're the driver.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Morning, board members. Before I get into this, I'd like to say two things briefly. One, I'd like to express my appreciation to Mark, our controller, and the entire team on the audit for last year. There's a lot of unglamorous work that goes into that all throughout the year, and then there was a lot of hard work that goes into it right at the end in terms of preparing all the schedules and things like that in order to be ready to have the auditors come in, and they've done terrific work. So thank you for that. And my other, I'd like to express my appreciation to you all for not moving the December meeting and giving us one more week. So
Just to be honest.
Heard you by your name.
That's what that was.
Two big topics that we'll talk about in the update today. One is to give you the overview of our 26 to 31 capital improvement program. We've been talking mostly about the operating budget, so we'll dig into sort of what changes you can expect to see in the coming program versus what we've had before. And then, as we had talked about last time, last week we distributed a memo to the board members talking about the results of the survey, how that plays out in terms of the board, the jurisdictional contribution. Then you all asked for some information about the history of the recent history that we've had in terms of increases to the fares, how that compares with the transit benefits. So we can talk through all of that, make sure that you all are clear. And then if you have a desire to give us any sort of different direction in terms of what to bring to you next month, we can talk about that. So I think at the Quantico ribbon cutting, I think the base commander made a very good point, which was that she was relatively new to that position, but she was getting to sort of preside over the ribbon cutting, but that it was the result of a lot of work that had happened by her predecessors over a number of years. And I think we're kind of in a similar position just with our capital program in general. You know, we had a number of years where it was like, okay, we have these projects and they're in planning and they're in design and they're sort of moving incrementally. And now we're really coming into a period where like, we're cutting ribbons, we're delivering real projects, which I think is really great. So what I'll talk through here is what are the projects that are going to be coming out of the plan because they're done, which is great. Again, kind of talk a little bit about the impacts of the property acquisition that we have coming with the Manassas line and how that's going to play out in a couple of different projects. Then sort of our core, about 10 or so major projects that are ongoing in different stages. Talk about a couple of projects that are sort of in transition. They are still in this EIP, but we're still sort of working through a few sort of nuances on them. Talk about projects that are going to be in the CIP, but more sort of out-year projects. They're not going to have all the money lined up, but it's important to acknowledge that we're going to be doing these in the next, 6-ish years or so. And then last, but certainly not least, the asset management, the information technology, all of those capital projects, which are really important to sort of the day-to-day for VRE. So you all have been at these. We have the Lou, have the brand new station in Fredericksburg. We have the brand new station in Quantico. All three of those are now going to be able to be done and be out of the capital program, which is great. We also had been carrying along for a while our automatic passenger counter program, just because we hadn't sort of gotten that across the finish line. We will be having that across the finish line and taking that out as well. So just wanted to give ourselves a pat on the back for these. So, there we go. We've talked a lot. Rich has already talked a lot. I don't need to repeat all the things he was saying about the property acquisition for the Manassas line. There are 4 separate property interests that are a part of this larger sort of umbrella. We have 2, the yard and Broad Run corridor that we, at the end of the day, will own. And then we also have the permanent easements for the existing stations there on the line, and also a permanent operating easement for commuter rail. We're going to be representing that in the capital program as its own project, given that it has the agreement that goes along with it, that has, the plan to use the FTA money on those property interests, which is then going to sort of pull the property parts of that out of the 2 existing projects that we do have. So you're going to see 2 big changes related to the midday storage project and then the Broad Run expansion. So midday storage, obviously, once this is all tied down, it's not going to be in DC, it's not going to be in New York Avenue, it's going to be in Alexandria. There will not be any necessary additional property acquisition, at least for the initial parts of that project. It's going to be a quicker time frame. It's going to be a lower cost. And we are talking through how to phase this project in terms of how do we get some trains in there basically almost immediately. That's kind of phase 1. Phase 2 is basically the replacement project for New York Avenue Yard. That will become our midday storage location. And then down the road, which you probably won't see in the CIP this year, but will probably be coming, is what other improvements in terms of like employee buildings, things like that, might be necessary to really turn this almost into a maintenance and storage facility rather than just a midday storage location. So this is going to be a process that takes a big jump this year and then continues to evolve after that. At Broad Run, those of you who have been here a long time may remember that we sort of initially had applied for the Broad Run yard and station expansion as one component of our I-66 program, and then we had applied for Manassas Third Track as another component. When we got the funding, we ended up saying, I think we're going to need to combine those 2 things. I think we may end up splitting those 2 things back into 2 different projects. Again, the end goal remains the same, but the presentation within the capital program is going to look a little different. With us getting the Broad Run corridor as a part of this larger Manassas line transaction, that takes out a big property question, at least for the Manassas Third Track. There are still additional property acquisition pieces that are going to be required. Both, we call them the slivers, little slivers of property that are needed for the Third Track, and then some other property that's needed for the yard expansion. Those will still be reflected in their individual projects. And we're still working within that sort of overall envelope of the I-66 money for the yard and the Third Track. So again, new project coming in for the property and then changes to those other 2 projects downstream as a result of that. These are our sort of big core ongoing projects, roughly listed from left to right, sort of in how close are they to construction versus are they still in design and engineering. Manassas Park parking, we've talked about that a lot. Absolutely going gangbusters. Same thing for the 21 rail cars from Alston, continuing to move ahead with the testing on those. We haven't talked quite as much about the Crossroads Yard expansion. That project is happening in a couple of phases, and you'll see that reflected in the capital program. We have the most immediate project, which should be going out for bid relatively soon to create a new employee parking lot. Then after that, the new employee welfare building, and then down the road, which will have in their expansions to the track and the other components there in the yard. Big ones in the middle, big station improvement projects at Alexandria, at Crystal City, Franconia, Alexandria, in close coordination with VRE, is now a station and bridge project. Pretty exciting. And then, getting a little further over to the right there are projects that are still working through a lot of the design and engineering. Very big project, of course, at Lafont, expanding the station and adding in the 4th track. And then Manassas, a platform expansion there, which we've had on the books for a long time. That also was part of the I-6 program. And then a a platform lengthening at Backlick Road, very similar, if you recall, to the expansion that we did at Wolf. All of those, again, continuing to move ahead in the program. Rich was just talking about Brook and Leland. These are projects, I don't want to cause you any concern. These are still in the CIP. If you'll think back to when the TRV program was announced, that caused us to sort of have to reevaluate a whole range of projects that we were planning to do on the RF&P line, on the Fredericksburg line. And we actually ended up completely deleting 2 projects, one at Lorton and one at Rippon. The Brook, Leland, Woodbridge projects, they are all still in the CIP. We're still looking to get, commuter choice money for them potentially. We're just trying to figure out exactly what's the timing going to be on those and how do they work with what VPRA is planning to do in terms of the third track and things like that. Just wanted to call those out. I mentioned then out-year projects. We have the past couple of years had some expansion rolling stock, locomotives and rail cars in there kind of as a placeholder in the out years. Those will still be in there. We're sort of readjusting, looking at how many do we need based on ridership demand. So I think in this year's coming program, those numbers will be similar, but probably a little bit lower, just as we sort of modify the rollout of our sort of post 2030 expansion. One that we haven't had in there before, which I think is pretty exciting, is adding additional crossovers, particularly on the Manassas line. And now that we're, again, in coordination with BPRA, how do we get the operational flexibility that we need there on that line? So we'll again, these aren't things that are necessarily going to be happening next year, but we want to have those in the program as a marker for things that we want to do, again, to achieve what we want down the road. And then again, last but not least, we have a long-standing program of taking the state of good repair money that we get from the FTA, putting it towards these critical rolling stock and facilities asset management programs. That really, when you look at like what do our priorities have to be, the safety and the reliability of the rolling stock of our stations, of our yards, that has to be the top priority. So that, we're always continuing to update that year over year. One thing we are looking at doing this year is looking at some of our sort of longer lived IT assets and seeing whether we can take those kind of out of the operating budget and do those with the SGR money as well. And again, we're always working on passenger information, trip and VMS, and so you'll see those in there as well. Yeah, I would like to pause there, I suppose, before we dive back into the memo stuff. Madam Vice Chair, if that's okay.
Does anyone have any questions on the items covered thus far, Ms. Bailey?
Yes, I do. And this may be something that needs to be taken offline, but I didn't see Potomac Shores anywhere.
Yes, Potomac Shores, we generally are not reflecting that as a part of our capital program, but it is absolutely a part of what we're doing. I don't want to make you worried there.
Just need to.
Yes, absolutely.
I think we used to carry it, but it was at $0.
Yeah.
That was confusing people.
Okay.
Like it was at $0 and it's like we weren't chasing funding for it and everything like that. So within the CIP program, it seems simpler to remind people that that was advancing, but to keep it out of the dollar.
Because initially when I got on the board, it was.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that's a good reminder for, as we present, when we do the budget book, we will absolutely make sure that is, we have a kind of a chunk at the end that talks about, projects being handled by partner agencies and
Yes.
things like that. Well, absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a quick question about the delivery of the cars. It was the second or third box, I think, on the, do you have a 21 expansion rail cars? Yeah. Can you just remind me the time frame in which we're anticipating those?
2027, 28.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I couldn't remember. And when you say expansion rail cars, these aren't replacement. These are.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So we have 100 rail cars currently. The The replacement date for those is out in kind of the mid-late 2030s-ish. These are the 11 and 10 rail cars that we got as a part of our smart scale and I-66 programs.
Okay. And these will take advantage of the new opportunities we have for additional slots on lines that we now own. Or, you know, we'll have more access to moving forward. That's sort of the vision.
Exactly. And those cars, even though they're expansion cars, they could become part of the, you know,
State of good repair.
first part of state of good repair and replacement, because I mean, we still refer to, I think in a lot of circles, as the 100 Gallery 4 Nippon Chariot cars as the new cars, but they're getting, you know, in some cases, they'll be 20 years old in a year, right? So they're not the new cars anymore.
And what's the way in which we measure the age of a rail car? Is it based on the miles it's covered, or is it measured by time?
So by time.
Okay.
Overall, we establish within our transit asset management program, we establish useful life benchmarks with all of our assets. I think rail cars are in that 25 to 30 year range. Locomotives are 20-year range, in a 20-year range. But what we find, and we're finding now again, is that with rail cars, and thanks for asking the question, because I think it's important to get this out, is that even we establish a 30-year useful life benchmark, the federal requirements continue to change. And there becomes a point where, particularly in the crash energy management, crashworthiness, it becomes a point where it's going to be cheaper to replace the cars sooner than trying to upgrade the cars to meet all those new requirements. So just teeing it up.
Mhm.
That's a
Appreciate
conversation we'd be having over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Mark, it's back to you.
Okay. So first we'll talk about the results from the master agreement survey that was at the beginning of October. And then I'll transition over to historical and current changes to the fares. So I'm doing this in a slightly different order than we did in the memo, just because I think it's a little bit clearer this way. So this is again, we went out, we administered the survey to all of the riders that morning. We had about a 65%, I think, response rate on the survey. We asked folks to tell us where they live, whether they live in one of the participating or contributing jurisdictions, or whether they live in, you know, Caroline County or wherever. And then we were counting passengers boarding on the trains to then expand that out to expand the responses of the survey out to the total ridership on that day. So that 4,247, you know, is an estimate of the ridership that morning. And again, this is total ridership. And so you can see here what the share of riders by jurisdiction is. And again, roughly 90% being out of the 7 participating jurisdictions, and about 10% being from all other jurisdictions, which includes Arlington and Alexandria. That is very typical. That is roughly the split that we've seen over many years. So in accordance with the master agreement, the allocation of board seats on the operations board comes directly out of total system ridership. And so if every jurisdiction is guaranteed 1, if your ridership is 15% or more, you get 2, and if it's 25% or more, you get 3. So those are the results there on the right. So I'm happy to pause here, or we can move on. Yes.
I have a question. So, and I tried to find my data from last year and I can't find it for some reason, but I thought this year our count was higher than last year. And I thought our percentage last year was higher, and we were right at the cusp of getting another seat. And now I'm sure it's a math equation that I'm not figuring out here. But can you look at what last year's was?
Yes, and in fact,
and send it to me, because I can't seem to find it, and staff doesn't have it for some reason, so. Because it just doesn't make sense to me.
And that's the way I recall it as well, but I just hadn't looked
I
at
can-
last year's. But
And if we can pull it up even before you leave here today, we could sit down.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Any other questions or comments on this element of the presentation?
Okay, so again, using the same survey results, now we move into the subsidy allocation. This is a more complicated calculation. It depends on, for the participating jurisdictions, it depends on your share of ridership among the participating jurisdictions only, not among the whole total of the total. And also it takes into account an estimate of the amount of passenger revenue contributed by people who live in your jurisdiction. I think we talked about that last time. So if you live in a more distant jurisdiction, your riders are taking longer trips, paying more. So that gives you kind of a credit a little bit against the amount of the jurisdictional contribution. So what we have here on the left is the approved amounts in the FY25 budget, totaling up to 18.3 million. And then on the right, again, at the preliminary amount that staff proposed of 19.8 million, how that would break out given the results from the survey. We have Arlington and Alexandria down there at the bottom again, because their contributions just go up by whatever the amount of the total pie goes up. So those are both going up by the 8% that the total amount is going up. If your share of the subsidy went down, then the number might be, about equal to last year, it might be a little lower, it might be a little higher. If your share went up, and I think obviously the most striking one on there is Fairfax County, higher, they had, relatively higher growth in ridership than the other jurisdictions. So you're seeing in that example, you're seeing a growth in the pie and then a growth in the counties. There on the pie.
I'm sorry.
My share.
No, I found the numbers Ms. Hayes was looking for.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I would be happy to dig into the methodology, let you guys lead the discussion
Yeah.
here.
Go ahead, Mr. Storrs.
I'd like to get the, just to share the ridership for the last 6 or 7 years through COVID, in other words, 2019, let's say, and to the present, but broken out by our master agreement jurisdiction.
We can compile that and get that to you guys in a memo.
Any other comments and questions about the jurisdictional subsidy allocation based on the survey results? Just for Mrs. Hayes' benefits and anyone else who was curious, in 2023, Pennsylvania had a 541 on the survey, which was 13.7%. And the prior year, 2022, was 501 riders, 14%. So I'm not sure, how that aligns with recollections, but
I thought we were closer to that in another seat. Didn't you think so, Rich? I mean,
initially, yeah, but
there.
those are the numbers right
Yeah, right. Okay. Wishful thinking, I guess.
I just trying to get more Spotsylvania County folks on those trains.
All right. Thank you very much.
I can forward where I found it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mark, continue.
So moving from the survey to passenger fares, the staff recommendation for 26 has been not to do an increase to fares. And there was some discussion about that and wanting to see a little bit more of the history. I think this is actually a pretty interesting chart. So what you have, we have about 10 years worth of data here. What is the transit benefit at the federal level? Again, this is the monthly benefit. And it has gone up pretty substantially over the period. DOT just came out a couple weeks ago with the number in the bottom line there, the $325 a month for next calendar year, 2025. So we have two sort of things that you can compare against. One is what we sort of tend to use a zone 6 to 110 trip as kind of a stand-in for a typical ticket, and how that price has increased. And then the maximum ticket, again, which is going from like Spotsylvania all the way down to Union Station and a monthly pass, and how that has increased. As we noted in the memo, back in 2016, the transit benefit would have covered about 80% of that max 9 to 1 ticket. If we stick with what we have for next year, it would cover about 92%. So it's that period 2021, 22, 23, where the transit benefit was increasing, and we were making the decision at that point to not yet increase fares where that transit benefit started to cover more and more. So there, I would just say there had been some discussion about whether maybe the time was right to do an increase for next year rather than not to. If that is the decision of the board, we can, you could give us direction to include that in the budget. We would be a little bit off in terms of our public participation process, but we can make it work. We could put it in the budget, have you adopt the budget, and then when the public participation is done, bring that back to you. If you were cool, your response that you got from the public, then we would just move ahead with the budget as adopted. If there had been that's a technical term, sorry. If there had been a lot of reaction or you wanted to revisit that discussion, then we could certainly say, well, maybe we need to amend the budget. So.
Are we cool or not? I mean, so, just kind of opening it up to the group at large, do we want to have a conversation to say?
I do think we need to do some sort of fare increase. You're asking for 8% increase in the jurisdictional subsidy. We've had a number of giveaways that we've done. And I think we need to have a fare increase. I don't know what that normally would look like, if we would, just want to take like historically how we've bumped. But I would be in favor of doing that.
Might have said this, but what was the fare increase last year as a percentage?
We did a 5% fare increase last year, right? Yes. Thank you.
Historically would be for decades. I mean, for a long time, we had done a fare increase in 1 year and a operational subsidy, jurisdictional subsidy in the next year. Personally, I think we should stick with that schedule. I think it's what our riders expect. I think it's what our jurisdictions have come to expect and plan for over the years. And if it is our view that the fare increase has not kept pace with transit benefits or costs or inflations, we have the opportunity next year to do a fare increase, perhaps higher than we otherwise would have, to get ourselves back on track. But I don't think changing our historic schedule of fare increase, jurisdictional subsidy increase makes sense this year.
Any other comments on this proposal, Mr. Stork?
Do we know, and I know it's difficult, but do we know if there was any significant impact on ridership based on the fare increase? I know part of it is we're still going back over the time, maybe we can't discern that, but do you have any sense of that impact of the 5%?
You're right, it is, that's a good question. It is difficult to discern in this environment. I don't think we've seen much, we still have about 65 to 70% of our riders who are getting the transit benefit. And there's only like 3 monthly tickets, the very longest monthly tickets that are not covered by the transit. So I do think our riders tend to be pretty inelastic, at least, and our current riders, again, who are still a lot of the federal employees, I think as a longer term discussion about how do we attract a different rider base, that's a very valid question, but I think currently our riders tend to be, they're more worried about, does the timing work for me? Is the reliability there? So I would say I don't think we've seen too much.
That's my perception, I guess, as well. And do we have any idea how, I know this in some ways doesn't matter, but I guess I'm more of curiosity, how our fares have been relative to inflation and other costs that have gone up during that period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a one-to-one at all, but I think the transit benefit is actually somewhat of a proxy for inflation, because they do tend to sort of link those two things together. And so that looking at 2020 and 2021, when we were in the pandemic and inflation was very, very low, and it didn't increase at all, and then to have it jump from 270 to 280 to 300 in that period when inflation was its highest, that's where our disconnect kind of happened.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to pose this question, but Mark, with the, just in respect of what Lori is saying, and with the inflation, with Supervisor Stark is saying as well, is there a way, considering the new election cycle and potentially what could potentially happen down the road in terms of ridership of the federal government, is there a way for us to come back and look at that again? You know what I mean? As it relates to, do we increase the fare? Do we not increase the fare and keep the standard of how we've been operating? Is there a way for us to take a look at that with the new election cycle that has just transpired?
Sure, I don't want to speculate about the election. There's a lot of moving pieces, but we tend to choose to do the fare increases along with the budget, because you're sort of making all of those decisions at the same time. But if the board wanted to come back off cycle from the budget and respond to changes in ridership, changes in federal policy, things like that, absolutely. We sort of tend to do it with the budget because it's convenient and it all kind of goes together. But if we as a board and a staff wanted to do it at a different time, absolutely.
Yeah, and if I may, please, I don't want to change your process. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, would it be cool if we, given, tongue in cheek, but, given not the election, but given, what could affect our ridership from the government perspective. That's why I'm just putting it out there, not to adjust your budget, how you process your budget, but I think it would be wise for us to even look at that. Just look at that. So I just want to put it out there.
Mark, do you mind reminding me the timing of when the fare, like if this budget did include a fare change, when it would take effect?
We almost put for July 1.
Okay, so.
We can do something different.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
do something, and
you can do something like that.
Okay.
It's the standard.
The standard is.
July 1 at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, so if this budget included a fare change, it wouldn't take effect unless we directed otherwise. Okay, I think to Ms. Bailey's point, to some extent, none of us knows exactly what's going to happen, but I do think we're entering a phase where we might see some changes. I mean, just that there is a net, I think for the last year, there hasn't really been necessarily any one moment that we were expected to see a big dip or a big dive. You know, we've just been kind of in, and I think what you're alluding to is that we've entered an era where we might see another, you know, different, you know, another shift, yeah, hopefully increase in ridership. And so I don't want to create, I mean, I guess I'm hearing a little bit on both sides here. I mean, I hear a little bit of your interest in knowing, you know, what a potential fare increase looks like. I hear the alternative, which is to sort of, you know, stick with our standard. One thing I'd point out, I guess, is that our budget as written is works because based on the fares that we are currently receiving at the price point they're set at, because that gap is being filled by pandemic relief funds. And should we increase fares and hopefully not lose ridership and potentially gain it, does that create a longer runway with pandemic? Is that the trade-off we'd see if it worked the way that in an, you know, perfect environment? The risk is we raise fares and we do pay for it. You know, we do lose people at a time when we're sort of clawing for every rider. I mean, that's what weighs on me to some extent. But then if I heard you correctly, Mark, I mean, do we know the exact percent, not exact, but do we have a confidence in the percentage of riders that are not paying out of pocket, that essentially pass through their transit benefits?
60. I believe it's about 65%.
Yeah.
This is that.
So it's
63%.
where price changes will be observed would be in that 35% of riders.
Yes.
Okay, and right now that's about 2,000 to 6,000 people on a daily basis. I mean, just, I'm not a mathematician, but I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay, just wanted to clarify a few of the questions this raised for me. So, Ms. Hayes.
So, and we still have the 18 and under free ridership, correct? Okay, so, but we don't really know how many people fit in that category, do we?
That's right. At least weekday ridership, we don't tend to have too many
Right.
of those. Again, part of the reason to bring that along was to help with the Saturday service, again, to, you know, to encourage larger groups and families and things to ride on.
Right. I mean, you know, I feel like we've done a lot of over the years that I've been on the board to encourage ridership. Yes, we see this little steady chug, chug, chug. I'm hoping that this new administration will have everybody come in 5 days a week, and then this is a non-issue, right? I mean, then we'll get back, but we haven't been. So, you know, from my jurisdiction standpoint, you know, it's a small amount of people compared to our whole that ride, and a lot of people are making up the difference. And we, you know, there is fairness involved here, that they should be contributing in the way of fares. And I think that it does bode well, that it does give us a little bit more of a runway to have a fare increase. Because we don't know what's going to happen. So I mean, I'm in favor of that. I understand your point, though. I do, that we've historically done this 1 year this, 1 year that, but the past 5 years have been, the rule book's gotten thrown out at every turn. So that's my thought.
I think my concern, and I appreciate that, is in my like shorter term on the board, it's been almost entirely a discussion about what does the future of ridership look like if it's not, you know, 75% of people going to the Pentagon, you know. And so I'm sort of, I can't help it. Like, that's the lens I joined the board through, is sort of what's the future of VRE, if not 5 day a week government employees. And so that makes me, I think, more sensitive to those 2,000 riders to some extent who aren't insulated by the transit benefit, because if they, and I don't know that they are, but if they are the growing portion, you know, if the percentage sort of stays, that's my concern. If we're going to see the growth over time in that portion, those people are more sensitive, I would assume, to price changes than government workers deciding to go back. And so that's what's sitting with me is sensitivity to that 30%. Because this body has talked a lot over the last 3 years of how do we grow those people. So in the interest of sort of moving, I guess, Mark, I'm not sure how much is left in the presentation. Nothing, okay. So this is an information item. There's not going to be any action to vote on, but I do think we need to leave Mark with some direction about the budget elements to bring back. So, Mr. Storer.
I just have a couple more questions. One is, I did the math on the federal transit benefit as a proxy for inflation from 2021. Obviously, 2020 really didn't have any inflation. 2021 on, it's 17% to 2025. So, and during that period of time, we had a 5% fare increase. I think, was that it? Did we?
Yeah, that was it.
So we clearly have, in my mind, some room, but I think to your point, do we know if there is in fact a growing number of users of the non-transit subsidy, or is that fairly flat?
Fairly stable
Fairly stable?
in terms of the percentage of riders getting the transit benefit. That's been relatively stable.
I mean, I don't know when we'll have, I realize for budget purposes, you kind of want to know that, but we also know that based on the 1%ers that are in here, 1% fare increase equals 225,000. The 1% ridership increase represents about 225,000. I mean, it's kind of interesting how those fit together, but we have some ability in how we project ridership in the budget as well as how we project fares in the budget to have another go at this. As you present the budget that we will be deciding upon, that is an option for us to tweak one or the other numbers to get to a balanced budget. Sure. Because they essentially equate.
They do. And I think mechanically, if we wanted to make a fare change decision kind of off cycle, at least right now where we're still using the pandemic relief money, mechanically, that's easy to do. We say, oh, okay, we're going to change it. We're going to increase the fares by 5%. That's another $1 million. That's another $1 million that we don't need from the pandemic money. So mechanically, we can do whatever, you as the board want to do, and doing it. I mean, I'd like to do everything in December and have it all be locked out. But if it's not because things are evolving, that's fine.
I'm as concerned about where we end up 3 or 4 years from now, given the kind of where we are in terms of fare increases to inflation and/or again subsidy increase. I do want to think about that, but I see the trade-off between whether we spend that now or later. I know that the transit money right now gives us flexibility that we don't have later on. So I'm happy to defer to our historical approach, but I'm not comfortable that we can continue doing that. So that's why I'm kind of hesitating on whether or not we should do something now or not. But I'm going to hold off, at least from my perspective, agreeing or disagreeing that we should raise fares this year. I think it's a serious issue that we're going to need to take another look at because I'm deeply concerned about where we're going. And I view most of the fare increase issue as an inelastic one. I think for most riders, whether it's 1% or 5% or some variation of that, it's not likely to change that. So if you have any data that shows otherwise, I'm very interested in that.
Mr. Parent.
Ms. Bagley, I really appreciate your take on the desirable, the non-captive ridership, which is the 30% or so. And I understand if Ms. Bagley speaks very highly of them because she comes from a jurisdiction that has amazing experiences with actually no fares. So they have immediately seen how this went up. And this is a very serious policy balance, right? I tend to be on the side of those who still appreciate a lot the fare box recovery part of the budget. I do think that we are in uncertain times and we need to calibrate as we go here. The sequencing has a method. The method is to see how it works and then fill the gap and then see how it works. So we're still in this calibration mode and see how this may happen. Actually, there are good chances that at least at the beginning, we will see an increase in ridership. Seriously, it is just there. I mean, it has been said by members of the transition team of the new administration that they want to bring fare employees back, etc. So for now, I think that I would stay with where we are and think through this a little bit more and see exactly how we calibrate the attractiveness of the system, because it's a mix of free weekends and new reliability, etc., that brings people in. And then I think that fares will be on the table one way or the other. I don't see how we can escape that at the end.
Any other, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Sabetsky.
Just to chime in a little bit, I agree with a lot of what's been said. We don't know what will happen and what will not happen. No one can predict the future. We need to keep in mind that more than 50% of the federal workforce is at an age that they can retire. And depending on what demands are made on them, we could have a mass exodus from government employment, which would affect all of our jurisdictions as well. There's just no way to know. All of that will or will not affect ridership. Your Gen Xers are not going to go into the office 5 days a week, so they won't take those government jobs if that's what the demand is made. So with all of that uncertainty, I think we stick with our normal process. This can always be evaluated at any given point. We're talking about it not even taking effect until July anyway. If we start to see some policies come forward or things that lend us to think, then we can always make that change before. But otherwise, next year at this time, we're going to be talking about a fare increase either way, because that's our normal process anyway.
Gary.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, with so much inconsistency and so much that's unpredictable, I think it would make sense to stay with the normal process. But I do also want to note that to make sure that we're prepared to push out some advertising or something in the event that they say, okay, everyone's coming back, that we're like, yeah, you're going to ride VRE when you go back, right?
We've saved you a seat.
Yeah, that's right. And louder, right? So, yeah. By the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so any other comments or questions, I mean, on this point or any other with regard to budget direction for Mark and his staff? I don't want to close the door on the opportunity. I'm sort of sitting in for Meg here and I'm hesitant to make what feels like a vote on raising fares in advance of the actual budget. So that's why I'm sort of giving pause. Do we want Mark to include, and is just sort of a here's what it would look like? I'm trying to read feedback. Are we comfortable that if we come back with a budget that does not include a proposed fare increase, we're comfortable debating that budget? Because it sounds like, loosely there's general agreement to stick with our every other year format. I'm also hearing, if ridership doesn't trip up, or if ridership trips up substantially and it's all government workers cashing in transit benefits, we could have a conversation in January or February about raising fares, and having more money come in no way complicates, I think, the budget. I mean, in an
easy budget amendment.
Right. So I guess I'd want to give some, to the concerns being raised. They're potentially addressable. They're not foreclosed by a decision to pass a budget in December that doesn't include a fare increase. We can monitor the next 2 or 3 months and act accordingly in February or March, because even those who are sort of saying today, I don't know if it's time, are also indicating, but I might feel differently in 3 or 4 months. So is everybody okay with that direction to Mark, that he brings forward a budget in December that does not have a fare increase? Go ahead, Ms. Hayes.
I mean, could you put a scenario together? And so we have that at least with a fare increase. you
I
know?
was gonna suggest, Madam
Yeah.
Vice Chair, I was gonna suggest that what would bring you next month, and even if you want, I'll look at this, you know, in the next couple of weeks or something, or in a couple of weeks, is just, you know, we'll bring you a proposed budget, if you will. We'll bring you we could bring you something, I say off the side, but it's not, it's
Right.
something to look at. How that, you know, maybe a combination of a jurisdictional increase with a fare increase, maybe a hybrid. Okay?
Right.
And then maybe get a little bit more into the levers. In other words, what these different levers are and at what time that we can pull these different levers. And so back to your point about maybe you're making a recommendation to the commissions in December. We meet those requirements of the master agreement and stuff, but you understand too that we can come back in in a month, 2 months, 3 months or whatever. And we've already identified what these different levers are as it relates to fare increases and the things that we're monitoring, i.e. ridership and stuff like that. And just kind of continue that conversation as the year goes on. I know it's really important for local jurisdictions and stuff to get our budget in their hands in January, right? So I don't want to jeopardize that. So anyway, if that makes sense, come with something, a little bit of analysis, maybe a hybrid.
Yeah, that would be great.
Increases, fare increase, just so we could have that discussion.
Right.
Just to add to what Rich was saying, if we're locked down on the jurisdictional contribution in order for you all to be able to do your budgets, and then we're making decisions on the fare increase, and that's higher or lower in terms of how much pandemic relief we're going to use. I think that's relatively easy. We can do that at almost any time. If we're still in motion on the jurisdictional contribution, that's just the one that would be a little harder for you guys to know by a date certain, excuse me, what the number is that you need to put in your budget. So.
And Mr. Stork had a comment.
The fare increases, have they been in odd years or even years historically?
Don't remember offhand, sorry.
So we had one last year, so it'd be 24's budget, right?
25, we did it for
budget, sorry.
we did it for 25.
And then the fare increase we had previous to 2025, you know, about when it was, and
Was 2020, I believe it was. I think it was for fiscal
year 2020.
Fiscal year 20. Yeah.
Fiscal year 20.
you think that's it? Yeah.
If you're
Which was
looking at-
before the pandemic.
This is, again, because I had to kind of mix and match a little bit because the transit benefit is a calendar year and pricing changes on it. So this is as of July 1 of the given calendar year. So.
James just pointed out, you can tell that, so I didn't observe, you can tell that from the typical VRE ticket. I sit here and use that as a proxy for the increases of.
Oh, true, right.
James.
Okay, so Mark, do you feel like you have clarity for us on what to bring back next month?
Yes, as far as I'll just read it back. As far as developing like the budget and the budget document and all that, we will proceed with what we have, but we will develop, as Rich mentioned off on the side, some additional analysis with respect to a potential fare increase. And if at any point the board says, yeah, we do want to go that direction, we can.
That's how I heard it as well. So I think with that, we'll move on from this information item. Yes, to the spending authority report.
Just wrapping it up. Just wanted to point out on the spending authority report at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about fuel. That's how we get our trains going. This one here, we did execute a purchase order to buy brake shoes. So that's how we stop the train. So I just wanted to book in the meeting with that. So we now can get trains moving and we can get them to stop as well. That is
Key elements of the process. Okay, pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, section 2.2-3711.a, parens 1 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the VRE Operations Board convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing two personnel matters relating to the performance of the chief executive officer and the general counsel and chief legal officer. Could I have a second?
Second.
All right, could the clerk please call the roll? This is a roll call vote.
Bagley?
Aye.
Ms. Bailey?
Aye.
Ms. Berry?
Aye.
Ms. Hayes?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Karen Tonis?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Mensing?
Aye.
Ms. Sabowski?
Aye.
Mr. Stork?
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw?
Aye.
And I vote as submitted.
All right, so we'll move into closed session. We'll give a minute to get the IT going and let people clear the room. Let's plan to start again if we can as close to 10:50 as possible. That's 4 minutes. Well, if I say 4, it ends up being 6.
That's classy.
Vice Chair.
Okay. All right, thank you all. The VRE Operations Board certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge and with no individual member dissenting at the just concluded closed session. Only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or requested. I'll just note that I did have to step out of the room briefly, but my colleagues have assured me that for the entirety of the meeting, these facts are true. Is there a second to that motion? Madam Clerk, it's a roll call. Could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bagley,
Aye.
Ms. Bailey. Ms. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Hayes.
Aye.
Ms. Holmes. Mr. Karantonis. Mr. McLaughlin. Ms. Mensing. Aye. Mr. Betsky left. Mr. Stork.
Aye.
And Mr. Walkinshaw.
Aye.
And Madam Vice Chair, the motion carries.
All right, with that, we're on to Operation Board Members time. We'll start here. I just want to thank everybody for the extra effort today with the closed session and encourage you not to miss out on Santa train tickets, December 2nd, December 3rd. Mr. Stork.
I have nothing to add. Thank you. Pass.
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 I look forward to hopefully this board next month, taking up the, as you mentioned earlier, the agreements between VPR and VRE regarding all the Manassas line agreements, funding, hopefully operating agreements. So hopefully that will come up next month. Look forward to it, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Fredericksburg has our Christmas parade on December 7th, and I understand VRE is part of that.
Absolute. Yes.
So, you know, it's like about as small town as you could imagine, and it's super fun. So
What about
30
30-something thousand people that watch the parade?
It's well attended.
It's very-
So, yes, if you decide to come, please call me ahead of time. I'll tell you.
We're looking for a win, place, or show this time, though, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pass that on.
Well, Spotsy says, hold my beer, because our parade is a lot smaller than their parade. But, but it is, it's the same day,
Mhm.
but it's during the day. And are you guys gonna be there? Or-
No.
Okay.
Not this year.
Next year.
Yeah.
But I'll be at the Spotsy parade and probably go downtown for the Fredericksburg parade. But, if you're in town, come around and check it out. But happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Yes.
Our Christmas event is not on the same day, so you can come
Perfect.
complex, and it's at 6 p.m. And our
What day?
it's Friday the 6th. It's the day before. And so it's at 6 to 9, and it'll be in the parking lot of our government center. It's such a fun time. It grows every year. We're gonna have a trackless train that goes around this parking lot, which is fun. The kids love it. Anyways, so happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I'll see you next time.
And our Christmas parade, I don't know the dates, but I'm gonna send it to you. Hopefully it won't conflict, but happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Great meeting.
And go ahead,
Just a
sorry.
couple things. Yeah, it sounds like we need to budget for another float now. Floats going. We have multiple parades.
Value engineer this
Yeah,
one then.
exactly. Yeah, and happy Pride Turkey Day. Thanks.
Without objection or further comment, we are adjourned. My phone rang, right?
Right.
Like, come on.
Now we go, to go battle.